What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What up? What up? What up? Welcome back to another reaction video. Michael Jordan ruining the Cavaliers needs a deep rewind from the YouTube channel Secret Base. I've reacted to a handful of videos rather from Secret Base, and I really like what they're doing. Well, I like the channel period, but with this rewind series, it needs a deep rewind. I really like what they're doing there. They take a story, a pretty well-known story, I suppose, sometimes, and then gets deep into the context and starts pulling out all these little things that were happening that might have been right in front of you and you somehow missed it, or context that you didn't know was going on in the background, and brings it all together, and it just makes you go, ooh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, well, that makes sense. Yada, yada, yada. It's very good stuff here with this deep rewind series. And I'm looking forward to getting into it and learning more and getting a deeper understanding of how Mike ruined the Cleveland Cavaliers. So this video is about 41 minutes, a little over, so let's get into it.
It's June 19th, 2016. Here in Oakland, California, the Cleveland Cavaliers stand just seconds away from winning Game 7 of the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. This would be the Cavs' first championship in 46 years of existence, an achievement that looked impossible by the end of the Ted Stepien era.
Okay, I've heard about this character, Ted Stepien. I didn't know who he was until I started doing content on his channel, and I asked somebody, who the hell is this Ted Stepien guy? And you all told me that basically he's the worst owner in NBA history, made a lot of horrible decisions, questionable decisions, getting rid of a bunch of high draft picks, meddling with affairs when he shouldn't have been. He was a very arrogant and pompous person, and even said some racist things towards some players or something like that. But interesting, he's getting brought up again. All right.
Nobody in 1983 expected the Cleveland Cavaliers to keep existing, let alone win a title. A lot has changed, and the line between then and now swerves in every direction. Before we witness this special Cavs moment, we need to recall the second chapter in franchise history, its rescue and rebirth under new leadership, and its second death at the hands of those notorious Reapers. Bad moves, bad luck, and one very bad man. We need to rewind. Less than a minute ago, the wizardly point guard Cleveland drafted in 2011 made the biggest play of his career. Kyrie Irving's heroic three-pointer bought the Cavs a late three-point lead with a title on the line. But the Warriors immediately came the other way with a chance to pull even. This screen set up a threatening mismatch. Scary moment for Cavs fans, and we will see how it went. But first, let's talk about how these men got here. Stories that connect to the second era of Cavaliers history, starting with Kevin Love. Go back a bit and you'll see that the Cavs acquired Love in a 2014 trade. It was a welcome change for the big guy. Love was an outstanding power forward in college at UCLA, even if he hadn't quite figured out his facial hair. His reward for collegiate excellence was getting picked 5th in the 2008 draft, consigned to begin his pro career with the lowly Minnesota Timberwolves. For his first 6 seasons, Love...
I didn't know Kevin McHale was associated with the Timberwolves.
Played elite ball, often at an all-star or all-NBA level, alone. The Wolves didn't surround him with talent and never made the postseason. They wasted the charity of high draft position, the opportunity to choose players. Love grew frustrated after 6 seasons stuck losing in Minnesota, but he feared penalty if he demanded a trade. Thankfully for Kevin, the Cavaliers desired a ready-made star and dealt the Wolves some promising young players so they could have him. In a way, this trade resembled those of the old bad Cavs from Chapter 1. Cleveland punted on tomorrow's potential to summon veteran talent today. But in this case, the modern-day Cavaliers traded with sound purpose at the right moment. In Love, Cleveland acquired a leading rebounder, a knockdown shooter, the kind of potent third option a great team needs, and a...
Pause. This is revisionist history. In hindsight, somehow Kevin Love did turn out to be the third option. But make no mistake about it, he was LeBron James' wingman. He was clearly the second best player on that team. Kyrie Irving was not better than Kevin Love. Kevin Love was a perennial all-star when he got traded. So, believe he was brought on to be the second option. Make no mistake about it. He was clearly a better player than Kyrie Irving.
Couple years later, here was Love defending a pivotal possession with a title on the line. Good trade. That is an important development in Cavaliers history. Trades allow a franchise to transfer players and assets from another team, but only by offering the same in return. That means sacrifice, and it means disruption, so you gotta deal at the right time for the right reasons. We know how ill-considered trades soured the first chapter of Cavaliers history. We left our last rewind in 1983 with a barren, hopeless roster all but packed up for a move to Toronto. Let's remember how the Cavs survived Ted Stepien, then met whole new forms of devastation. It's gonna get black and white for a sec, don't be alarmed. During World War I, the United States passed the Trading with the Enemy Act, which authorized the seizure of German assets in the US. This is how Bayer lost its American patent for aspirin. After Prohibition, an American brewer named George Gund Jr. capitalized heavily on the purchase and sale of this so-called alien property, like the decaf coffee brand now known as Senka. Decades later, 2 of Gund's sons, George III and Gordon, invested that wealth in pro sports, hockey in particular. By the early 1980s, the Gunds owned Richfield Coliseum, which served as the suburban Ohio home of the Cleveland Cavaliers, although not for long. After stripping the team bare, obliterating future draft rights, and infuriating the fan base, Cavs owner Ted Stepien was 99.9% set on moving the franchise to Toronto. The team had a new name and everything. The brothers Gund had tried to stop the move. Ted insisted he heard their offer in good faith, they just couldn't work things out. But in a surprise turn late in the '83 season, Stepien relented. Gordon and George Gund put up $20 million or so to not only keep the Cavs at their arena, but also take over Stepien's advertising business. The Cleveland Cavaliers were saved. Ted Stepien was gone. But as we've established, Stepien had not only damaged the existing team, but hampered its future by selling off first-round draft picks in the years to come. Stepien's lasting NBA legacy is a bylaw that forbids teams from trading future first-round selections in consecutive drafts. It persists to this day. The more immediate effects of his mismanagement needed a more immediate remedy, so NBA lawyer David Stern made an unusual arrangement. The Cavs didn't receive their original picks back, but the Gunds were allowed to pay $500,000 to add a bonus Cavaliers pick to each of the next 4 drafts. This was an unprecedented act of pity, and some owners didn't like it, but everyone knew the post-Stepien Cavs were embarking on a unique rescue mission. While George III carried on with the family's hockey investments, his brother Gordon became the face and principal decision-maker for that Cavs rescue. Gordon Gund is an interesting guy. Accomplished, gregarious, philanthropic beyond measure, and by the time he took over the Cavs, completely unable to see because of a genetic condition called retinitis pigmentosa. Even without sight, Gund became famous among reporters for his ability to connect with people and to command a room with incredible hearing and the ability to memorize the positions of people around him. For everything else, there was Joe Tate. In the summer of '83, Gund rehired the beloved announcer Stepien had driven out of Cleveland for being too critical. The voice of the Cavaliers stuck around until his retirement just a few years ago, as it was meant to be. Gund entrusted Tate's voice with matters of friendship, like mapping out the food on his dinner plate. And when it came to business, the owner knew he could count on Tate's radio call for an honest, vivid assessment of the on-court product. That product was kinda rough at the outset. World B. Free was the top performer in those early days, a scoring star too cool to worry about his hairline. Free did his best to put on a show during the mid-'80s transition period. Another post-Stepien holdover was executive Harry Weltman, who stayed on as GM and gave George Karl his first NBA coaching job with the '84-'85 Cavaliers. Those Cavs finished 36-46 and actually made the postseason. Free led his younger teammates in a shockingly competitive series against Larry Bird's Celtics, but Cleveland fell in Game 4 against the eventual Eastern champions. To keep improving, the Cavs needed to nail the draft selections they'd bought from the NBA. As you know, that is how losing, unappealing teams fix themselves, by choosing new players who probably wouldn't have chosen them. But the front office led by Weltman wasted those first 3 bonus picks. Future All-Star Doc Rivers sat on the board when the Cavs picked 24th in 1983, but they passed on him. The Cavs famously lacked their 4th pick in the loaded 1984 draft and thus couldn't claim Charles Barkley, but they still could have snagged John Stockton at 12 and chose not to. In 1985, the Cavaliers had the chance to pick Karl Malone 9th. Instead, they selected Cleveland's own Charles Oakley, a fine enough pick, until they dealt him to the Chicago Bulls in an inexplicable trade. By the end of the '85-'86 season, the Cavs were a normal basketball team, but not a good one. So they started from scratch. Weltman fired Coach Karl, and then he got fired himself. Gordon Gund had new leadership in mind. Wayne Embry was once an Ohio hoops star, high school, college, and pro. He went on to win a title with the 1968 Celtics, and soon after retirement became the NBA's first black general manager with the excellent Milwaukee Bucks of the early 70s. When the Cavs job opened up in 1986, Embry was working for the Indiana Pacers. Despite his superior resume, Embry got passed over for a promotion to Indiana's open GM job, which instead went to Donnie Walsh. So when Gund came calling, Embry took an interview. It went poorly. A Cavs board member asked him a ridiculous question, albeit far from the worst racism Embry dealt with in his career before or after. Gund kept pressing, though, and Embry eventually assented, agreeing to take over as Cavs general manager right after the '86 draft. Cleveland needed him sooner than that, though. It was a really big draft. The Cavs still owed their 7th pick to Dallas, but the post-Stepien recovery scheme allowed them to purchase the pick right after it, number 8. And they'd also heard the Philadelphia 76ers were willing to trade away the number 1 pick. So, with permission from the Pacers, Embry helped run 2 draft nights at once from his office in Indiana. For Cleveland, he approved a trade to get that number 1 pick, sending young Cavalier Roy Hinson to Philly for the opportunity to draft the best center in college basketball, UNC's Brad Daugherty. The 8th pick was a no-brainer. Versatile swingman Ron Harper was born and raised in Dayton, then broke some Embry scoring records at Miami of Ohio. Perfect fit. With his remote work complete, Embry spent the rest of the night on Pacers business. He set up a trade to acquire the Dallas Mavericks' 25th pick so Indiana could grab Georgia Tech point guard Mark Price. Just one thing. While Embry was on the phone conducting Pacers business, the Cavs were speaking to a different Mavericks executive, and they finalized a trade first. So without his input, Mark Price ended up with Embry's new team. That was kind of awkward for our friend Wayne.
I was wondering where this was going, obviously, because I knew where Mark Price ended up going. So I was like, okay, well, what actually happened then? But that explains it.
Who got reamed out on his last day with the Pacers and waited a while for absolution. Oh well, Dallas kinda owed the Cavs for all that Stepien nonsense anyway. Once Embry officially moved to Cleveland, there sat the bounty of young talent he'd helped assemble. Doherty, Harper, and Price, and the Cavs finally signed their 1985 draft pick, John Hot Rod Williams, who'd been away for a year dealing with the legal fallout of a college point shaving scandal. These 4 players, all recruited through the draft, would play a huge role in the Cavs' return to excellence. Doherty was the centerpiece, with refined skills down low. Hot Rod his perfect complement at forward. Harper provided scoring from the wing, and Price would soon prove his brilliance at point guard. To lead them, Embry hired Lenny Wilkins, once an all-star and early Cavs player who'd since become a title-winning head coach. And yes, a black person. Eat shit, guy from the job interview. Eat shit, racist hate mail. In year 1, the Cavs lost games while the youngsters got their feet wet, but they still played some of the NBA's stingiest defense. In year 2, Embry accelerated progress by trading future for present, like the Cavs of yesteryear, but with actual purpose. Cleveland sacrificed some young players, including sharp rookie Kevin Johnson, to acquire established veteran contributors. Larry Nance and Mike Sanders fleshed out an imposing frontcourt rotation, one that allowed Coach Wilkins the flexibility to bring Hot Rod off the bench if he wanted. That did the trick. The '88 Cavs secured the franchise's first winning record since the '70s and returned to the playoffs. At long last, Cleveland was ready to compete. But with whom? Well,
welcome. Surprise,
during the
surprise.
same years the Cavs pieced together a playoff-ready roster, their divisional neighbors rode a one-man skyrocket to the same point. The Chicago Bulls chose Michael Jordan with the 3rd selection in the 1984 NBA draft. By 1988, Jordan had become, the best player in the NBA, a phenom and an artist, the clear-cut league MVP and Defensive Player of the Year at age 25. Draft picks are the gift that keeps on giving, as long as you don't give away the gifts, Ted. In contrast to the balanced Cavs attack, the 87-88 Bulls watched Jordan average 35 points a night for the 2nd straight season, just an astounding portion of scoring for one person. He'd hung 52 on the shorthanded Cavs during a regular season win in December. In a closer March contest, the Cavs swarmed Jordan's last shot, but Charles Oakley, the burly garbage collector originally drafted by Cleveland, tipped home the game winner. MJ did have some help. But Jordan's Bulls had been swiftly eliminated from the prior 3 postseasons. MJ had just one playoff game victory to his name, let alone a whole series win. So the MVP still had a lot to prove. He didn't want to be remembered as just a scorer for an also-ran team. To level up his reputation, Jordan would have to thwart these 6th-seeded Cavaliers, who were embarking on their own maiden playoff voyage. And good Lord, could that man thwart. Ron Harper was Cleveland's MJ specialist, but Harper had to sit game 1 with a nagging ankle injury. Jordan hung 50 points on the 2nd stringer, Craig Elo. Easy Bulls win. Harper returned for game 2, but look at him trying to fight over a screen. He wasn't himself. Before that game, MJ suggested he'd rather face Harper than Elo, which felt a little like trolling, but Jordan dropped 55 in another Bulls win, so who am I to disagree? And while MJ's excellence headlined the 2 wins in Chicago, the former Cleveland draft pick, Oakley, pitched in as a rebounder and second scorer. Back in Cleveland for Game 3, Mark Price broke out for 31 points to command a home win in his first career home playoff game. In Game 4, Harper took over. That was the beauty of these Cavs. Anyone could take the reins. Jordan put up his usual absurd numbers, but didn't get enough help from people like Charles Oakley. In the closing seconds of Game 4, Harper poached Scottie Pippen's inbound pass to Dave Corzine, some typical Cavs defense to secure the series tie. After a dormant decade, the playoff atmosphere crackled to life at Richfield Coliseum. It was palpable on the broadcast. Imagine you're Gordon Gunn hearing this ecstatic Joe Tate call over the roar of the crowd.
Jordan goes with 7 seconds remaining. Harper goes to the line, and they're going to Chicago on Sunday.
But Chicago hosted the final winner-go-home Game 5, and that decisive contest foreshadowed some of the dynasty to come. Jordan performed masterfully as usual, and Pippen, Chicago's unsung rookie, justified a surprise last-second starting nod, leading a comeback with the best performance of his young career. Cleveland had life in the final minute. Harper picked Jordan's pocket to feed a clean Price pull-up that cut Chicago's lead to 3. But next time down...
Let me just say this about Mark Price. If you don't know, Mark Price can shoot the damn basketball. That boy was a stroker.
Jordan and Oakley busted ass on the boards to ensure Game 5 would not come down to the last possession. 2 icy Jordan free throws clinched his first series victory, denying Wayne Embry's Cavs the same. But more opportunities ahead. Embry's roster had playoff experience now, and they were well positioned to run it back in '89. Only 1 rotation player departed, although given the nascent rivalry with MJ and the Bulls, it is notable that it was a 2-guard, young shooter Del Curry. Cleveland left Curry unprotected in an expansion draft, and the brand new Charlotte Hornets snagged him. Cleveland stayed otherwise intact for the '89 campaign. The kids improved, the recently acquired vets got a full training camp, and the Cavs found sweet harmony. Wilkins commanded the second most efficient defense in the whole NBA. Nance's skyscraping blocks highlighted Cleveland's impenetrable interior. By February, the team once known as the Cleveland Cadavers held the league's best record. Wilkins thus got to coach the '89 Eastern All-Stars, which included a chunk of his own squad. Cleveland's keystone, Doherty, made his second straight appearance. Nance joined in for the first time since '85. And the third Cavalier All-Star really turned heads, Mark Price. The little guy whose '86 trade acquisition got Wayne Embry in trouble with the Pacers burst out as one of the best point guards in the NBA. Dead-eye shooting the ball, shifty handling and dishing it among the well-balanced Cavalier attack. No less than Isaiah Thomas, fellow All-Star point guard from the despised Detroit Pistons, was floored by Price's performance. Isaiah saw a guard quicker than himself, who'd risen from second-round pick to star incredibly fast. That little shit could flat out play. With all this going for them, the Cavs were the team on the rise. Magic Johnson had dubbed Cleveland the team of the '90s, but some experts were impressed right now, even predicting a title in '89. Isaiah's defending Eastern champion Pistons didn't love that, and made a point to not only beat the Cavs, but beat them up. In late February, Detroit big guy Rick Mahorn concussed Price with a deliberate-looking elbow, and Price wasn't quite himself the rest of the year. Before season's end, Detroit pulled ahead of Cleveland in the standings. But the playoffs mattered most, and before any potential Pistons matchup, the Cavs had to
Bill Laimbeer was literally the worst, man.
face a familiar first-round opponent in unfamiliar circumstances. These were different Bulls. Oakley was gone, MJ was at odds with coach Doug Collins, and Chicago had regressed to just 47 wins. Unlike in '88, Cleveland entered with a superior record, a convincing win streak against the Bulls, and home court advantage at Richfield. Some expected a Cavs sweep, but not for long. Price missed Game 1 of the 5-game series with an injured groin. Craig Elo started in place of Cleveland's leading scorer, and the Cavs just weren't the same team. Chicago stole Game 1 against an opponent Pippen described as dead without Price. But Harper broke out in Game 2 to secure a split at home, and after losing Game 3, the Cavs pulled off the unexpected in Game 4 at Chicago Stadium. Jordan dropped 50 on the Cavs yet again, but looked furious at himself for missing 2 of 4 crucial free throws in the last minute of regulation. In the midst of a disappointing offensive series, Doherty at least outshot Jordan from the free throw line in Game 4, including these 2 even-keeled makes that sent the game to overtime. In OT, Jordan fouled out, and the combined scoring of Nance, Price, and Harper carried the day. So, Cleveland set up another do-or-die Game 5, at home this time, a major fork in the road. Wilkins had by this point committed to a taller lineup, one that forced Pippen to guard Larry Nance. But Game 5 was still an off night for Cleveland's bigs, who carried a variety of injuries. The guards kept the Cavs in it. Gritty performances from Harper and Price, and heroic scoring from the sixth man, Craig Elo. Chicago took a lead into the final minute after Jordan found Pippen for a corner 3 to just beat the shot clock. But Elo responded with a 3 of his own, and then got payback for this painful Jordan bucket. Wilkins drew up a gorgeous inbound give and go to spring Elo for the double clutch finish that put the Cavs up 1 with just seconds left. One stop would earn this Cleveland squad their first playoff series victory. Wilkins stuck Elo on Jordan to get that stop, and he did not. MJ hung in the air seemingly forever to cap a 44-point outing with this series-deciding bucket. A moment so famous that people just call it the shot. 1 year after failing to upset the Bulls, Cleveland got upset by the Bulls. They couldn't believe it. Said Ron Harper, "It is not over. I refuse to believe it is over." At least for him, it was over. Harper had always stood out a bit from the splendid '86 draft class that formed this team's foundation. Ron was a local guy with a newly minted local agent, Mark Termini, who fought hard for one of his first clients. Harper actually held out for a couple weeks of his first Cavs training camp until Termini and Wayne Embry could reach terms on a rookie contract. And playing where you grew up has its downsides. Embry and the Cavs heard rumors about Harper's friends and irritated him by fussing over the company he kept. Now 25 years old, Harper opened the '89-90 season on the verge of a breakout, Cleveland's best hope of rebounding from that brutal playoff defeat. Sparkling early numbers put Ron on pace to become an NBA All-Star in the same state where he'd won high school and college honors. But the voices whispering to Cavs management grew louder. League security got word that the DEA was poking around Harper's friends, that he might actually get subpoenaed as part of an investigation. Sports executives at the time were particularly sensitive to drug scandals. The NBA was still reeling from Len Bias's tragic death in 1986. In Cleveland, Don Rogers of the Browns died from an overdose the same month as Bias. Another Brown, Kevin Mack, got an obscene prison sentence for a cocaine bust that very summer. Some former Cavaliers had been part of the sprawling Phoenix Suns drug scandal in '87. So when he was apprised of a potential investigation, Gordon Gunn made up his mind instantly. Embry dithered and Wilkins pleaded, but Gunn wanted Harper gone, now. Embry was compelled to trade a celebrated local talent at the top of his game. The decision made everyone miserable, Coach Wilkins especially. And the eventual trade was grim in basketball terms, too. This is not the name you want invoked after a Cleveland transaction. The desperate Cavs found their taker in the mediocre Los Angeles Clippers, who also milked some draft picks out of the deal. Harper, who had no say in his move, played some excellent years in LA, even after tearing his ACL. Later on, when he gained free agency, Harper chose a new role alongside this old friend of the Cavs. The drug stuff never amounted to much. The agent, Mark Termini, would never let the Cavs forget that. Harper maintains to this day that the Cavs could have won titles in the 90s if they only kept him. Let's see what actually happened. Cleveland's return package in the '89 trade centered around an important figure in our story, Danny Ferry. LA had picked the Duke star second in the 1989 draft, but Ferry bailed on them to play in Italy, and he would not return in season. Embry predicted, or perhaps prayed, that Ferry would be worth the delay, like some others who didn't join the NBA immediately. While they waited, the sullen, depleted 1990 Cavaliers struggled. They hadn't exactly planned for Harper's departure, having lost utility forward Mike Sanders and backfilled with young guys meant for the bench, like Steve Kerr and Chucky Brown. And to make matters worse, health betrayed our protagonists. Doherty and Nance endured difficult recoveries from off-season surgery, and Price opened the season hurt as well. Cleveland ended up losing 40 games, including all 5 of their meetings with the Bulls. As if to jab his thumb in the hole vacated by Ron Harper, Jordan scored a career-high 69 points against Craig Elo and friends at Richfield in March. The Cavaliers made the playoffs, but the Sixers took care of them in the first round. Chicago and Detroit battled for the East, while the Cavs could only watch. The 91 season was worse. It took a substantial salary to retrieve Ferry from Europe. That deal, plus a generous new contract to prevent restricted free agent Hot Rod Williams from departing, put the Cavaliers well over the salary cap. Too bad, because while Ferry played an adequate enough career in Cleveland, his knees were in bad shape and his performance never came close to justifying the Harper trade. Hot Rod injured his foot early in the 91 season and ended up playing just 43 games. Price's year was cut short by a torn ACL. Lenny Wilkins' once elite defense fell below league average, and the Cavs finished just 33-49. The team of the 90s missed the 1991 playoffs. Jordan and company planted their flag in the decade by winning the title, and then, 5 more of them. No matter what the Cavaliers did, the Bulls never let them any closer than they got in 1989. And it's not like Cleveland stayed bad. Lottery-picked point guard Terrell Brandon brought some extra burst in 1992, and that was just icing on the cake of a bounce-back year for the vets. Price in particular looked shockingly great after ACL surgery, picking and rolling with a healthy front court. The 92 Cavs won a regular season game by the largest margin in NBA history. Cleveland racked up 148 points without a single individual cracking 20, a perfect encapsulation of the ensemble effort that made them great. Those revitalized Cavs went on to win their first playoff series under Wilkins, with Doherty playing some of his best ball to outgun Drazen Petrovic and the Nets. Then came a grueling second-round win against the fading Larry Bird Celtics. A bit later than expected, the Cavs had arrived. Unfortunately, the Bulls never left. 1992 Eastern Conference Finals. Cleveland actually snatched an early road win against Chicago, but squandered it. They got an uneven MJ outing in Game 6, but squandered it. Nance dominated Game 6 and Price gutted through a bum ankle, but the point guard dribbled off his foot on a crucial play in the final minute. Yet another Cavaliers season ended against Chicago, at home, in defeat. The Harper trade haunted the Cavs, not just because they lacked a star wing to battle MJ in that conference final loss, but because they felt stuck in place. Even though the 91-92 roster finally punched through to the conference finals and earned Embry Executive of the Year, it still wasn't enough to match Chicago, and high salary left little room to improve. Adding Gerald Wilkins wasn't going to change Cleveland's fortune in the 1993 playoffs. This time, the Bulls swept the Cavs in the second round. Despite a sprained wrist, Jordan ended that series on yet another contested dagger of a jump shot in front of 21,000 heartbroken Cleveland fans again.
This crowd is stunned!
By the end of its life, Richfield Coliseum belonged to MJ. Even during Jordan's baseball days, the Bulls prevailed. The Cavs got a new coach in Mike Fratello and some new young contributors, but the front court injuries resurfaced.
Tyrone Hill.
Chicago swept Cleveland again in the 1994 playoffs. Because of those injuries, 94 marked the final career games for both Nance and the much younger Daugherty. Price and Hot Rod were the only members of that late 80s core to join the Cavs in their move to Gund Arena in downtown Cleveland and to wear these jerseys, which I gotta say have grown on me over the years.
I do like those.
Coach Fratello leaned on younger lineups, but filled that new arena with the slowest, muddiest basketball you'll ever see. The Cavs settled into middling seasons that ended with either a first-round exit or, in the case of 1997, defeat in a do-or-die Game 82 of the regular season, which could have clinched the 8 seed. Stung by the unfulfilled promise of the 90s, Cavs ownership felt the itch to just go get a superstar, an MJ of their own. It wasn't yet obvious, but Cleveland had royally whiffed a prime opportunity to get that guy in the 1996 draft. That night, the Cavs selected Vitaly Potapenko 12th overall. Kobe Bryant was still on the board, and Peja Stojakovic, and Steve Nash. It looks pretty bad in retrospect. When you fail to choose the superstar that fell in your lap and can't persuade a superstar to choose you, you gotta force the issue. Gordon Gund was done waiting, done settling for Plan B. He wanted the guy, or, as close to that as possible. The reluctant Embry thus swung a 1997 trade for disgruntled Sonics forward Shawn Kemp, who Cleveland convinced to stick around with a huge new contract offer. The move earned Embry another Executive of the Year award, but while the Cavs' pricey new star kept them above water, he didn't take them anywhere of note. Injuries and Kemp's declining condition prevented any renewed cohesion between youth and experience. The Cavs missed the playoffs of the 1999 lockout season, and soon thereafter, Gund cleaned house again. He fired Fratello and pushed Embry to resign the same year he entered the Hall of Fame. The Cavaliers crossed into the new millennium with new management, new coaching, and a roster in flux around the founder in Kemp. Ohio guy Jim Paxson took over and emptied the tank in order to, tank. Cleveland re-earned their old nickname with a squad comprising grumpy cast-offs and youngsters learning on the fly. There was promise, but not nearly enough. By 2003, the Cleveland Cavaliers owned, for the first time since the Stepien years, the worst record in the NBA. Gordon Gund had saved them. Wayne Embry had rebuilt them in a flash, and Lenny Wilkens had led them. But injuries, desperate trades, and one bad man in red had snuffed their promise to become the team of the 90s. The Cavs exited the century hollow, barren, dead, again. And yet, here we are. The 2016 Cavs are full of talent, enough to win a championship if the next few seconds pass without mishap. Just seconds ago, Kevin Love, a player Cleveland acquired by trade, faced a tough matchup in the critical possession following Kyrie Irving's three-pointer. Actually, this scene surfaces a long thread of Cavaliers history. Tug that thread with me for just a second. Remember Dick Snyder? Hero of the 1976 Miracle at Richfield? Well, a couple years after he hit that game winner against Washington, Snyder signed with Seattle. Cleveland got a couple draft picks as compensation for his departure. That's how it worked back then. The Cavaliers used one of those compensatory draft picks to select Bill Laimbeer. You remember him. In 1982, Ted Stepien traded the future All-Star to Detroit, which was bad, but in return, our friend Ted got a rare first-round draft pick. With that 12th pick in the 1982 draft, the Cavs selected John Bagley, the dude who scouts ranked so much lower that they thought the pick was a joke. Remember that? Stay with me. So Bagley actually ended up being pretty decent, and in 1987, the Cavs used him in a 3-team trade to acquire a guard coming off an intriguing rookie year in Utah. That was Del Curry, who played a very promising sophomore season with the 87-88 Cavaliers. At age 23, Curry broke out as one of the league's better three-point shooters.
Yes.
He could have meant a lot to Cleveland, especially once they traded Ron Harper. But we know what happened in the 1988 expansion draft. Cavs GM Wayne Embry made the tough, regrettable decision to leave Del Curry unprotected. He chose instead to secure Chris Dudley, a shitty backup big man from Yale who had once been the bar fight partner of some kid named Brett Kavanaugh. In claiming the mistakenly unprotected Curry, Charlotte didn't just add an exciting young shooter to their new NBA franchise. Del had just welcomed his first son to the world. Wardell Curry II was born at Akron General Medical Center in March of 1988. But because of his dad's job transfer, Wardell Jr. grew up in North Carolina. In North Carolina, he became a high school basketball star. In North Carolina, he played his way from obscure recruit to national star at tiny Davidson College. The Golden State Warriors drafted Del's son 7th in 2009, and he developed gradually into one of the sharpest shooting, slickest handling point guards ever to play basketball.
Yes.
And you've probably figured out by now that Wardell Curry II goes by his middle name. The baby gestated in Utah and born in Ohio, but raised in North Carolina because the Cavs wanted to keep Chris Dudley, grew up to become Stephen Curry. This guy. Moments ago, Curry was in position to match Kyrie Irving's dagger 3. This is his office, his hunting ground. Steph lives to pull up from deep in the clutch, as he demonstrated with a world-class finish just a few months ago.
Well, I was going to say yes. Until he said clutch, I was on board. It's like, yep, he lives to pull up from 3. And then when he said to pull up from 3 in a clutch, I'm like, I don't know about that. He doesn't hit as much as he should.
Ago in OKC.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Mike Breen's voice probably still hurts from that call, but you know he was getting ready for another bang moment. Because, yeah, this was a dangerous matchup. Horrifying for Cavalier fans. Kevin Love has been many things to Cleveland, but lockdown perimeter defender is not one of those things. Love scrambled to force a bailout pass, but Curry retrieved the ball from Draymond Green, pulled a few moves, and...
Back, crossover, puts up a 3! Rebound, James!
Phew. Bullet dodged. Admirable defense from Love. The Cavaliers kept the lead and regained possession when the rebound fell to another person born at Akron General Medical Center. This person remained in Ohio and became the light at the end of a dark tunnel. While the greatest player of the 1990s destroyed Cavalier hopes, the greatest player of the 2000s was growing just a few miles away.
Before he said that, I knew where he was going with that. I was about to say, you better watch your words and watch them carefully before you finish that sentence. Sure enough, he said the greatest player of the 2000s. I vehemently disagree, but to each their own.
It's time to meet LeBron James.
If you want to say the greatest since, or the greatest in the decade 2010 to 2020, I'll give you that. But no, sir. That first decade in the 2000s, definitely goes to Kobe Bryant. And if you don't pick Kobe Bryant, you better be picking Tim Duncan. All right? Sorry. I don't think it's as easy or what's the word I want to use? I guess you can say I go against the grain, right? Everybody, oh, Jordan, LeBron, Jordan, LeBron, Jordan, LeBron. I'm like, I think there's other people that can be brought up in these debates. And when you talk about the year 2000s, Kobe Bryant won 5 championships in a span of 10 years. 5. From the calendar year 2000 to calendar year 2010, Kobe Bryant had 5 championships. No other star player had that. Not even Tim Duncan. A three-peat and a back-to-back, folks. Let's keep it 100, baby. Let's keep it 100. 100. Anyway, this was beautifully done. This was great deep diving. Great deep rewinding by Secret Base. Definitely did their homework and put a lot of the facts out there. Now, being that there's a lot of stuff I didn't know that he mentioned in this video, I'm assuming that it's mostly accurate. There may be some areas in there that may need a little context applied, but I don't know what I don't know. So I'd have to imagine it's mostly accurate. But it's quite amazing how, the chain of effects goes and the chain of events and how everything just kind of has a snowball effect into what happens next. And then, a bunch of heartache, a bunch of heartbreak, a bunch of miscalculations, a bunch of mismanagement, a bunch of various different scenarios leading to this and that, and then ultimately, you end up with LeBron James, and you go through some, first stint with him, he leaves, there goes heartbreak all over again, he comes back and helps bring you a championship where it was looking impossible and improbable in 2016 when they were down 3-1. And it's amazing how everything's linked, right? The Dale Curry and the Steph Curry and even Danny Ferry. If I'm not mistaken, Danny Ferry was involved in Cavaliers management in that first decade of the 2000s with the Cavaliers. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong there. But it's just amazing how all this stuff is connected. But it's funny how the world works sometimes. Michael Jordan was definitely the Cleveland Cavaliers' worst nightmare. The Devastator. The Grim Reaper. Oh my Lord. Bro, just dropping 40 and 50 points on them like nothing. Ripping their hearts out on game-winning buckets. Mike was on demon time, man. When he went into Cleveland, he was on demon time. I guess people say, well, Mike was on demon time all the time. Whether the Bulls won or lost, Mike was going to make you feel it if you had to you wasn't getting that victory unscathed, I guess you could say. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think about it. Add any context. Give me your opinion on any of this. There's a lot to digest here. No question about it, all right? Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. By the way, they did Ron Harper wrong. Eventually, he did go to the Bulls, and he came to my beloved Lakers and helped us win championships, all right? Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.